Okay, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, the J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, the Tommy D. Duncan III. Jimmy, it is
Look at that.
Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. Jimmy, if it's Wednesday night,
It's Black Men Speak, Tom. You know it.
yes,
And so
sir.
let's give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music, and also to Forest Films and our own studio for providing our virtual studio and doing some of the production work. With that being said, Tom, um, this is going to be one of those shows, Tom, that you're either going to love what we say or you're going to hate what we say, or maybe a combination of both. But
Yes, sir.
sometimes you have to have these come to Jesus talks and be real with each other in order
Uh-oh.
to make progress.
Come to Jesus, Jimmy.
Come to Jesus, Tom. So the chat line is open. The phone line is open. Tom, let's get that phone number up so people can see if they want to call into the show and
Okay.
participate. We're not one of those shows that reject outside voice. We want to hear what you have to say also. So Tom, so I came across this Father's Day sermon. Actually, my daughter sent it to me about a week ago, and I thought it was fascinating enough that we could actually do a show about it and talk about it. Some of the things that, and this is a sermon by T.D. Jakes, some of the things that he says, I think, have larger implications than what his sermon talks about. Basically, the sermon was about um, women becoming more manly, becoming more masculine. We've already done several shows on that time, so we don't need to beat that dead horse to death. But
Mhm.
I think that there's some couple of points that T.D. Jake is trying to make, and there are a couple of points that he's making. I don't think he realized that he's making, but it becomes very interesting for us to talk about it, Tom, because it points to a bigger picture that we have in the black nation. And that is, we have to get our relationships correct before we can do any of the other things. All the other things we talk about, all predicated on strong families, strong communities, in order to build a strong nation. Man, if you don't have some strong families to build a community on, you don't have very much. And that's where we find ourselves today, Tom. So, how do you want to handle it? You want to play the sermon first and then
Yeah,
kind of jump into a
let, let-
conversation,
yeah.
or
Let's see what the Reverend T.D. Jakes has to say and see where that takes us.
are y'all any kin? Yeah, both TDs.
Here we go.
Okay, let's see what TD has to say.
If Adam had not allowed Eve to pour into him, sin would have never come into the world. Sin came into the world because Adam broke the order. We were not designed to receive from women. Your self-esteem is compromised when you have to ask your wife for lunch money. I'm not saying you got to be rich. I'm not saying you got to be famous. I'm saying that you have got to be the one who pours in, not the one who takes out. When Adam started eating out of his wife's hand, sin came in because the divine order was broken. This breaks all sociological orders of the culture we're living in now, because we are raising up women to be men. And you are not applauded for your femininity. You are applauded in the contemporary society by how tough, rough, nasty, mean, aggressive, hateful, possessive you are, and you are climbing the corporate ladder, but we are losing our families. I know you can buy your own car. I know you can buy your own house. But until you create a need that I can pour into, I have no place in your life. So stop coming home bragging to me about how much you don't need me and wonder why I shy away.
Okay, Tom, very powerful speech, some
He said a
powerful
lot.
words. You said a
He,
lot.
he said a lot.
So, I want to start. I want to start by saying, Tom, that I agree with most of what is it bishop or pastor? What does he call himself?
Bishop T.D.
Bishop. Okay, Bishop Jakes has to say, um, except when he gets to the end. When he gets to the end, he points out that somehow women are creating this environment where they're not allowing their man or their significant other to have something to pour into them. And this is where I would disagree with the bishop because I don't think it's up to the your spouse, Tom, to figure that out. I think if you're a
To
true
figure what
leader,
out? To figure what
figure
out?
out how to become significant in your life. How can you pour into her life in a meaningful way? And I think when he says pour into a person's life, what he's really talking about is infusing value, making a person feel good, making them feel wanted, making them feel loved. And so it's not all about money, although we're going to get into the money a little later um, because it is important. But it's up to the leader of the household, Tom. It's up to the king of the castle, the master of the domain, to figure some of these things out. You don't allow the knights or the jester or anyone else in your kingdom, even the queen, to come tell you that it's time to go to war with another nation, or it's time for you to build a bridge, or it's time for you to do something right. As a king and the leader of your kingdom, you have to set some directions, Tom. You have to be willing to say, this is what I'm working on in life. This is where we're going in life. And and if you either on board with me and trying to get there, or you're not. And if you're not on board with me, Tom, then this is gonna be very harsh. And I'm sorry to have to say it, but it has to be said. What good is the woman to you if she can't help you get to your destination? You know, I mean, so I'm gonna go back and all this that I'm going to say is based on biblical scripture. You know, and when you look at the hierarchy, you know, when you look at someone like a Jordan Peterson, he talks about hierarchies quite often. If you're not familiar with the Canadian psychoanalyst professor, then you should go check him out on YouTube. He does have some really good lectures. But he talks about these hierarchies. He talks about being competent, Tom. And if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, the Bible talks about three heavens: heaven on earth, middle heaven, and then paradise, heaven with the Father. And if you're trying to get to one of those, I'm not sure what the middle heaven is. I haven't found much on middle heaven, and other than a couple of vague references to it, I'm not sure what middle heaven is for. But we understand what the paradise, what the Father is for, and then we understand what heaven on earth is for, with the kingdom of Jesus Christ. So that middle part I haven't quite figured out, but every man should be trying to work on getting his heaven here on earth. That is part of your duty. That's part of your responsibility. That wasn't just an assignment for Jesus, the Son. It's a mandate for all the sons. Whether you're one of the Christ or you're a lesser Christ, you're a demigod, or you're just a plain man, it doesn't matter. Your goal is to find a way to create your heaven here on earth. And part of that creating your heaven here on earth, Tom, is when the Adam and Eve got kicked out of the garden, um, God could have just easily erased them and started over. You know, but that didn't happen. He set them on their way with the intention that the two of them can work together. That's why your helpmate is important, to go create your hell. You create your own Eden. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be as easy as the one I created for you, but working together, the two of you can make this happen. And Tom, if you don't give your significant other, or your wife, your girlfriend, your fiance, whatever she is in your life, if she doesn't have a purpose to help you achieve that garden, that Eden, that your heaven on earth, what good is she to you? You know, do you really need it in life? And from a spiritual perspective, I say no. And that's where we are now, Tom, is that we're not pairing, there are not enough men who have a purpose of creating heaven on earth and find the right woman to be his helpmate, to help him accomplish that, and not taking charge. And by her not having a role or responsibility, you have no reason to be appreciative of her, Tom. She brings nothing to your life other than some companionship and sex. And that is not enough in the end to make this work.
Well, Jimmy, what I guess the question that I'd like to ask is what is the thesis and what is it that we're trying to resolve here And we've talked in the past about a lot of movements in this country
Right.
that Black folks have adopted, and for whatever reason, they worked out for everybody else but our community. But if we dig back into our past, I mean, we're talking about the premise of a Eurocentric patriarchal society that is reaffirmed in most of the writings of the Bible. And I understand, I definitely understand that and get those reference points. But if we dig back a little bit further into our native cultural history in Africa, I mean, we not had great kings in Africa, we had great queens in Africa as well. Whether we talk about Cleopatra, whether we talk about Hatshepsut, whether we talk about Makeda, and all of these things. And so we're looking at this in the context of living in a social system, a European social system in the United States, which is discreetly patriarchal. And the question then becomes, what is it that we are seeking to accomplish in the competitive society that we are in today? And then figuring out what is the model.
Well, Tom, to answer that question, the group dynamics is always at play. I'm not one for I'm not very big on group identity. I do think the individual identity um, usurps the group identity. But since we are talking about group survival, groups, blacks, whites, how you divide and conquer whatever ethnic group you define, either based on geography, religion, or on historical relevance. It doesn't matter. There's always a group dynamic at play. So for us, black people are catching hell in this country. We've been catching hell for a very long time. If you think about the effort, I don't think the God that we serve does things just for no reason. It took a great deal of effort, pain, suffering, death, and resource to move 12 million Africans from Africa to America. That doesn't even account for the 8 million that got tossed in the ocean or
Hello.
jumped overboard during the Middle Passage. So we're talking total over 20 million people, Tom, and that
And
is a
some
lot.
estimates, Jimmy, some estimates 25 million.
Yeah, so that's a lot of human capital. And so we can't allow our experience now to go for naught. We can't let that be wasted. So we were brought here, we were enslaved, we had nowhere to run to, with very few places we could escape to, without still being subject to being returned into slavery. So, with that being said, we were subject to this. We came out of it, Tom. We survived it. We spiritually as a people, we stood up for the best of in the American dream. We were more American than the Americans.
Yes, sir.
We fought in every war. We believed in the principles. When they told us that all men are created equal, we believed it. Believed it so much so, Tom, that we were willing to go out and fight for it and protest for it. We were the soul, the heart and soul of this country to make it better, to make America face that she was not living up to her words, that she was basically being a hypocrite. So America was not a great place to live, Tom, before this, when the Klan could just lynch people at will, when white people could get together and lynch a black man or kill a black woman or rape without worrying about any kind of prosecution or punishment. We didn't have an immigration problem at that time, Tom. People not pouring over that border trying to get to America when a lot of this was going on, especially in the South. But someone had to stand up to it, Tom. Someone had to stand up to the tyranny and say, you know what, this is not right. And that fell on the shoulders of black people. Now look at us, Tom. Look where we are. Our families have been destroyed. Our communities are in shackles. Our economic base gone. Our schools, totally destroyed. Um, and the black woman and the black man can't somehow figure out how to put Humpty Dumpty back together, Tom, to make this work. Without strong families, we can't have strong neighborhoods or communities. And without those, we can't have a strong black nation. And we're going to continue to lose ground, continue to catch hell, Tom. And this has to start somewhere. And for me, it has to start with the black man.
What does that look like when you say it needs to start with the black man?
What I
Because
mean by that, Tom, and so I'm not a social scientist. I'm a technical person, engineer, but I do study human trends. I do study the universe quite frequently. So I read a lot of papers. I like to read studies and see what other people think. And I've come up with, Tom, that there are five types of men, but we're going to narrow it down to just three for this conversation. They're gammas, they're betas, and they're alphas. Um, and we think we have a clue as to what all three of them are about, but I'm going to clarify for the sake of this discussion. Gamma men or grown boys, they're fun, they're charismatic. You love to be involved with them because they're lots of fun. These are guys you generally date in college, but they're not marriage material. These are just guys you sleep with, you have fun, and then at some point when you get serious about life, you move on. The betas, Tom, are those guys who are serious, they're responsible. These are the guys that you marry, you make husbands out of. Um, Unfortunately, Tom, the betas don't have more love for their woman than they have for themselves. They're somewhat codependent. They're always overly concerned about making her happy as opposed to making themselves happy. And they will sacrifice their happiness for their wife and certainly for their family. Now, there is some of those traits, Tom, are somewhat admirable, but in the bigger picture, it's also very cowardly. And so you have to be careful when you're a beta man. And then alpha men, Tom, are more your leaders. They're your pack leaders. They take charge. Um, they have more love for themselves than they have for their significant other. That's not to say that he doesn't love her, but if he has to come down to sacrificing his what's going to make him happy just to make her happy, and he don't feel she's reciprocating, then guess what? He checks out. So, and then the other big distinction, Tom, betas settle for women. They generally, especially if they have an attractive woman, they will settle for that, even though that's not their first choice. And alpha men select their women. They don't settle, Tom. They find a woman that they like or they want to have in their life, and they go find a way to make it happen to incorporate her in the life. So, excuse me. So those are the three distinction, the three levels, Tom. And the reason that's important is because when you study, I just saw a paper just a week ago dealing with divorce rates. And I didn't know this time, and I was very surprised. And I had to go check it with a second source just to make sure it was valid. Did you know, Tom, that 80% of college-educated women get a file for a divorce within 7 years of their marriage?
Nope, that wasn't something I was aware of specifically.
I was not aware of it either. And then if you look at years ago, I saw. Hold on for a second. Oh, my wife. Many years ago, I saw a study in Psychology Today talked about this study that the University of Minnesota commissioned, and they've been doing it every year since. So it's out there, and lots of universities have done the same study, trying to understand why, since women initiate divorces more, what causes a woman to walk out on her husband, to divorce her husband. And Tom, 90% of the respondents, and it's been pretty accurate, 85, 90% for over 40 years I know of. The response is they don't feel appreciated.
The
And
the wife doesn't feel appreciated by them.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And so and part of that, Tom, is that alpha men, for example, don't have a problem. They understand that this house is my kingdom. I'm in charge of it. I'm responsible for it. So when they have a woman that they've selected to be their ride or die, who helps them with their manage their kingdom, help manage their domain, they're able to do something, Tom, that betas find it very difficult to do. One, they know how to say thank you for the assistance that you're giving me in managing my kingdom. And the other thing, they don't have a problem, Tom, with complimenting the woman that's in her life, letting her know that I'm happy that you're here. I'm glad you're in my life. And if she ever comes to him and say, "Why do you love me?" Such a simple question in a relationship, you would think that you would have an easy answer. Alpha men have an easy answer. Gamma men have a lie. Beta men have no answer. Betas will say, "Well, you know why I love you. I don't have to explain it. I do it in my action. I go to work every day." They give some vague answer like that, but that's not very inspiring to the woman you're with, Tom. And since betas don't care enough about themselves to have a destination, to have a heaven that they're trying to build here on earth, there's nothing the woman can help them with. They have nothing in their mind that they need to say thank you for, But without saying thank you to your woman, you should say it pretty much every day. You should find some reason, whether she cooked the meal, cleaned, washed, or helped you with your children, helped you with your kingdom in any fashion. Say thank you. Let her know that you appreciate it. So if we're going to build strong families, Tom, our beta men out there need to stop being betas and learn to be more alpha centric in their approach to managing their wives. Because if you don't, now 36% of betas somehow survive, don't end up in divorce court after 7 years. But more often than not, if you're a beta, you're married to an attractive woman, you care more for her than you care for yourself. Most likely, you're gonna end up losing her in a few years.
Well, I mean, those are some interesting thoughts, Jimmy, and I mean, you kind of put them into different categories, and I'm hearing, one of a couple of things. You have folks who think differently and who possibly communicate therefore differently, or you have folks who are communicators and or non-communicators. I would surmise that everybody is not born in a certain mode. So, I mean, I guess I would say I don't know if anyone is born an alpha male, born a beta male, born a gamma
They're
male.
not.
So the question is the development of those young boys that are becoming men, and depending on where that's leading you, what kind of adjustments need to be made. And then obviously a part of that comes to who raised you and how did they raise you, not just in your household, but in your community. Because I think we all, we all had a mother, we all had a father. Maybe our mother and or our father was not in our life, but the question becomes this: where were those influences in our lives and how did they develop us, whether those were our biological parents, grandparents, uncles, grandfathers, grandmothers, and how did they shape us and mold us? And if they fall out into these different categories, it's a matter of making adjustments so you can figure out how to make sure you're getting the best out of your household to build strong communities through strong children so that obviously you build a great nation. So that begs the question: where are we now and what is the challenge?
The challenge, Tom, is to for us to understand as black men that we have a certain kinship with God or the gods. It doesn't matter how you believe. Um, and that is, Tom, we were made a certain way. So T.D. Jakes points out or talks about that we were not designed to be the kind of men that we find ourselves being, Tom. So we have to understand that. So no matter what you didn't get growing up, no father, no uncle, no grandfather, nobody, no male figure in the around in your life to help you understand these things. You still have a responsibility to God to do the right thing. And part of doing the right thing, Tom, is being able to inspire, if you take from the ministry of Jesus, what kind of Christ would he be if he couldn't inspire 12 men to follow him? You can't inspire one woman to follow you to help build your heaven, then what good are you to God as a man? You're worthless to him at that point. So why in the world should God waste time with grace for you when you're worthless in return to him? So we got to find a way back, Tom. So as T.D. Jakes point out, that if you're not being the kind of man that God intended you to be, that you were designed to be, your main purpose is to build your heaven here on earth. You don't have any other purpose. Your other purpose is to be the father of nations. You don't have any other purpose if you can't find a woman that you can have kids with, which is the start of your nation, and then have them in a kingdom, in a domain that's functional, that's God worthy, and that God would praise and bless. If you can't do those things, Tom, what good are you to God? If you're no good to God, then why in the world shouldn't you catch hell here on earth? You have these movements now where you're taking boys and trying to turn them into girls, telling them that they're more woman than the real women who were born a woman. You have gay men telling black women that they could teach them a thing or two about being a woman. Imagine the audacity of someone telling a woman, a man telling a woman that he can teach her a thing or two about being a woman. And so T.D. Jakes is right, is that women have been coveting the wrong things for so long, but it's not all their fault, Tom. Some of them don't are paired up with men who don't understand their true purpose, and because of that, they're causing the women to cover things that they normally wouldn't.
Jimmy, I found it pretty interesting as I was thinking about what T.D. Jakes was saying. Ironic,
Hmm.
ironic, because T.D. Jakes is likely, if not a top three, probably the most well known minister, televangelist, um, religious religious mouthpiece, probably not just in America, but on the globe.
Black ministers, Tom, he's number one. Maybe he's probably number one with all ministers, but it may
Yes,
be a close tie with some. I don't keep up with all the what do you call it, televangelists on TV. The guy down in Houston seemed to be pretty popular, but I would say you're probably right. He's probably the top
yeah,
ministerial
he's in
voice.
the top
Period.
three, probably of all ministers. And what I think is ironic when he is talking about this theology of women who have been, I think they were in his words, women who have become more masculine. Those weren't his exact words, but that's my
Yes,
interpretation. What influences or shapes the psychology of Black women, if that is his thesis, more so than the Black church? I don't know if there are any other institutions that shape the psychology and theology. This isn't a conversation about Black women, but I just thought it was ironic that he, of all people, was sharing his theology of how Black women are being transformed into a masculine psychology in this country in particular. I can't speak for the Caribbean other than the fact that I don't believe that most Caribbean women are of
they
that
don't,
ilk.
Tom.
If I look at some of our sisters, in the in the motherland, not so much, but in the U.S., it's a very unique
Yes.
psychology. I don't know of any other institutions that shape the psychology and the thinking of Black women more so than the Black church.
Until we both have traveled to the Caribbean, you more so than me, and we can distinctly see the difference in women, married women, just women, period, between black women in the Caribbean and then black women in America. Um, I've spent a lot of time in Central and South America, especially Brazil, Trinidad, Peru, Venezuela, back when it was safe. Um, and Tom, I could tell you right now, is the attitudes are totally different. And if more black men had passports and traveled abroad, I don't know. I think they'd be willing to. They would realize that what we experience here is just not the norm. We think it's a norm because we think we set the tempo for the rest of the world. But women outside of America are totally different. And then let me say this other thing, Tom. You hinted on it, I think, early on in the show. We talked about social movements. Um, the whole burning of the bra, sexual freedom movement, works out for white people. It doesn't work out for us. We end up with a lot of babies that we can't take care of. The whole drug movement, peace and smoke dope, they can become president smoking dope. We end up in prisons. This whole thing with partnering, the women's right movement, all that did. I mean, you look at that even the women now who are in that movement, a lot of them go home to husbands and children and families. Tom, they may talk the talk out in public, but behind the scenes, they walk a totally different walk. But our black women buy into the whole feminist movement. They don't walk a different walk at home, Tom. They walk the same walk. What they say publicly is what they mean when they get home. And somehow black women have bought into this whole partnering thing. Tom, in the garden, the first husband and wife, there was no partnering. God made Eve for a purpose. He realized that Adam was going to need help. And so part of Adam's responsibility is to find a way to create an environment for Eve to be helpful to him. He failed in that, and we saw what happened. On top of that, he failed to provide the leadership and the discipline that she needed. And so when he started following her, which is what happens now in today's society, far too many black men are following the lead of black women because they, I don't know, have a better profession, a bigger paycheck. Um, but black women buy into the whole partnering concept. But marriage, husband and wife, was never meant to be a partnering relationship in the eyes of God. There's nowhere in the Bible does it mention any partnering. When God wanted something done, we said you're going to be the father of a nation. He told the men that. The men always had women or women, plural, a woman or women to help them with that mission. They didn't go and say, well, God said do this. You need to tell me how to do it, and I'll follow you, follow your lead. No, they had to take the lead step, Tom. And if they don't, if you don't do that in life, if you don't apply, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. I mean, the same. I can say the same thing and go pull out verses out of the Quran or the Torah. For the most part, this is somewhat, or even like Confucius or Buddhism. I mean, there are lots of other teachings that sort of say the same thing. The point is that there's some kind of expectation for men to lead, and when you don't lead, bad things are going to happen.
Interesting points. So, I mean, you made a point about where we are now versus where we were. Obviously, if we look at our experience in the experiment called the United States, we have always been here. Our ancestors were brought here in order to build an economy and to build wealth for
Correct.
another group of people, our own. We were used, our mothers, our foremothers, and our forefathers, not so that we might have the opportunity for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what I'll call wealth, but to create that for someone else. The question is, how do we change that context? Because that has been used against us. Now, we've talked about this multiple times. We overcame enslavement. We conquered enslavement to a certain degree. We look at 400 some odd years of slavery. We look at sharecropping. We look at Jim
Right.
Crow. We look at the civil rights movement, and we're still here. We're still fighting. The dynamic is a little bit different. I would agree with you there, because we had men in the lead who were the protectors and the providers. Now, what we're dealing with now is that our households have become split because we don't have as many mothers and fathers in the same household. And we're, I think, 3 generations in where the majority of our children are being born into households where there are not a father. I was looking at an article, I believe it was in the 70s. We were right under 25%
Correct.
children out of wedlock. I think now we are close to 70% children out of wedlock.
73%, Tom.
73% out of wedlock. The question begins, where are we going? Where are we trying to go? And how do we adapt? Because quite frankly, we are living in a system where we don't particularly control our destiny as a nation of people. So how do you adapt to that? How do you build a system so that you are controlling your own destiny? Because other groups of people, and we've talked about this before, whether we talk about Caucasian Americans, whether we talk about Latin Americans, whether we're talking about Asian Americans, whether we talk about the American Indians, the indigenous people of this country, or if we talk about Eastern Indians, they all have their slices of a pie, and we do too. It just happens to be a lot smaller. What
Tom
is
is
it
not
that
smaller than it should be,
right,
and
of
that's
course,
our fault. I mean, we know that,
I would
and
agree.
so what we have to do, Tom, is what we talked about many times on this show, is that we have to build strong men. If you're a beta male out there, I'm tired of hearing this excuse that good men finish last, and I agree. A lot of betas do finish last.
Well,
Um,
I mean, what defines a good man? I mean, when you
well,
say,
that's here's my point, Tom, is that a lot of guys think they're good guys, but they really aren't. If you can't, you telling me that
what is
okay,
what is good and who's defining it though?
okay, I'll help you define it, Tom.
Okay,
Defining
this
it
is your
is keeping
definition,
is yeah, it's my definition. So I don't
right?
want defining it is keeping your kingdom working. Your primary job, if you're the king of your castle, if you're the master of your domain, you got to keep that functional. Your kids have to be educated. You know that. Your wife is a big part of that. She has to be happy. Time if she's not happy, then she's gonna be creating a hell within your kingdom, and you don't want that. And what makes her happy? Taking her out on a few dates, complimenting her every now and then, finding a way to say thank you on a daily basis, and you telling me that that's too hard for you because I don't communicate well? That's just an excuse, Tom. These are things that a lot of men, and I hear the same complaint. Back in the day, Tom, you knew me back then. I think you've known me longer than anybody else, and so these are a few things that you already know. So I'm not sharing anything that you didn't know already. But after my divorce, I was married to my college sweetheart. 7 years in, divorce. Um, Tom, I had no game. I had no rap. I had no woman. And it took me a year and a half of studying on how to make all this work. Why are some guys more successful with going to a club and walking out with someone, and I thought I was a pretty good guy. I was an engineer. I was doing okay financially. Why can't I do this? In time, once I figured out a few principles on how this works, you have to literally beat women away with a stick. There was nothing I could do to a woman, no matter how horrible I tried to be to her, that would get her to run away. I mean, I had a woman, Tom, that just as a game, I dated her and broke up with her 7 times, just to see how many times she
Not
would
seven
take me
times.
back. 7 times, Tom, she took me back before she finally gave up. And that I'm telling you that this leadership thing, deep down, this is what I don't care what women say they want. They say they want a man they can control, they can partner with. Blah. Okay, that's all good and fine for now. All the women I know that have that are miserable. All of them
That
get
have that
tired of
have that have
saying
what that have what specifically, Jimmy?
that have a man that they partner with,
When
that
you
they
say
pretty
partner,
much
what does that mean?
well, that means like we split responsibility and there's no traditional roles. We talk things out, we decide together, which really means she decides. But deep down, Tom, what women truly want is comes down to just evolution and biology. They want to be secure.
Yeah,
And if you're
I'd agree
not
with
a
that.
strong man at providing security, whether it's financial, emotionally, I mean, it comes in various forms, but across the board, you can't say I work every day and bring a paycheck home, but then your woman is starved for attention. You're not on your game at that point. You're not a good man to her if you can't make her happy. Like I said, borrowing from the ministry of Christ, he had to go get 12 men to follow him and inspire them to do that. You telling me you can't get one woman to follow you? You can't inspire that one woman? Nobody's telling you to go out and get a dozen, but you can certainly be able to get one and get that one time is not that difficult if you provide the leadership and security that she needs where she's safe. Now she don't have to covet manly traits. She don't have to outman you in a household if she knows she has a man that is making her happy and it's going to provide security. And so all these guys that think they're good guys, if you can't answer on any moment's notice when your wife comes up and you say, "Why do you love me?" Because I guarantee you, Tom, these same fellas you can go to them and say, "Hey, which is better, the PlayStation or Nintendo?" And whichever one they select, they can have an answer as to why they like those tennis shoes, that video game. But when their wife comes to them and asks them, "Why do you love me?" You don't have an answer. What is it about me that you? If she has to ask you that, you're already off your game. There's a problem there. If you don't know how to deal with it, come to Black Men Speak. We can do a private session and teach you.
But
The-
then that begs the question. That's a very good point, and I would agree with you, Jimmy. A man has to be intentional. We've always talked about this, and one thing I will say, Jimmy, is you have always reinforced this fact. If you
yeah,
don't have a plan, you're going no place, and you don't deserve a good woman. And I agree with you 200% on that. If you do not have a plan,
thank you.
and another thing that I would say I have to agree with you undeniably is if I have not yet, I may not have come across, I have not seen yet a woman who basically dictates and controls the man in her life and she is happy.
Thank you, Tom.
And whether that's married or whether that's just in a relationship, I have not seen, they usually get frustrated and it seems to be kind of
They're happy at first.
ironic. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Over time, yeah, they can't stand it after over time. It wears them out, Tom.
It does. So where are we
So
going here?
where we're going here, Tom, is that we have to put this challenge out to black men to stop making excuses. Like I said, if you're one of those guys who want to use the excuse that I'm not a good communicator as to why you can't tell your wife, girlfriend, significant other at a snap of a finger why you love her, why you want her, why you need her. If you can't answer that question, Tom, just off the top of your head at any given moment, then there's something wrong. Either you
Well,
with the wrong woman, or you need to step your game up.
I
And
would agree.
part of stepping your game up, Tom, is to one make her feel wanted and needed. Let her know that she has a place. That you going somewhere. And I would tell this with the women in reverse also. If you're with a guy that's not going anywhere, that doesn't aspire to anything greater than the two of you, but he's just happy that he has you in his life, then he's worthless to you. He's not going to be a good leader. He's looking at you to lead, and in the end, you're going to get tired of that, and you may not leave him, but you're not in love with him either. You're going to fall out of love with him quickly, and you're just there going through the motion, and he's going to feel it, and you're going to feel it. Y'all may just stay together for the kids. Who knows? But that's not how you want to live life. Alpha men don't live that way, Tom. They alpha men go out and they get what they want. They fight for their goals. They fight for their woman. They fight to keep her happy because they understand how important she is to him. And no matter what she does in his life to make his kingdom run a little better, he doesn't have a problem with just saying thank you. How hard is that? I talked to a friend of mine, and him and his wife are going through this very same thing. I said, "How often do you say thank you to your wife?" And he has a pretty good wife for him. He'll even say it. Oh man, why do I have to say that? She know how I feel. Obviously, she doesn't know how you feel if you don't tell it to her every now and then. Why is that so difficult to say thank you or to let her know you appreciate what you've done or what she brings to your life or tell her why you love her? Explain it to her so she understands that you're not just with her for some other reason. But Tom, if you can't do that, then you've already failed your kingdom, and one of the most important pieces on the chessboard is your queen. And if you're not keeping her happy, then you're not gonna have much of a kingdom. That's gonna be destroyed and defeated, and you don't deserve to have heaven here on earth if you can't do the things that God calling you to do, which is not that difficult, Tom. It shouldn't be that difficult.
I would agree. The woman in your life, whomever that happens to be, she needs to be appreciated. She needs to
Yes.
feel appreciated. And let me tell you, brothers, for those of you who did not grow up around sisters like myself, you have to learn to communicate, even if you are not a native or natural communicator. I did not grow up around sisters. I had to learn that she is not, let's be straight 100, Jimmy. They expect us to be able to read their minds, but we cannot. And quite frankly, they're not going to read our minds, even though they think they can, but they still have to have the appreciation. The only way they're going to get that is through communication, Jimmy. And that's not only through your words, but through what
Your
you do.
actions.
And
Yes.
let's be very clear, Jimmy. It's going to be a struggle. They are going to challenge you all the time.
All the time,
And
Tom.
at the end of the day, Jimmy, I say this over and over again. You have to stick to your guns. If she's with you, she's with you. And if she's not, she's not. But let's really get to these last 20 minutes in the
Okay.
building of the men in order to strengthen our community, because I believe that's the premise of what we're trying to say.
Yes.
Um, I am of the opinion, Jimmy, that we come from the genetic history where not only did we have kings, but we had queen mothers as well. And there are both masculine and feminine characteristics in both men and women. In this country, our women have been shaped, I believe, through mass media, through their households being built by mothers to be strong women, and
Yes.
creating a channel where more of the masculine attributes have been shaped in women. And I believe that is what we see. With our men, our women, because they have been the primary caretakers of our children over the last two, going on three generations now, is that in some cases, not all, that our young boys have been protected, and as they grow up into men, that's what they understand, being protected by a woman. The question is, when you have a woman who is looking for a protector, but they are with someone who only knows how to be protected, then you got a problem that you got to solve.
Well, Tom, that's one of the things TD Jake talked about. When you're feeding, taking food from the hand of the woman, that God didn't engineer you. You weren't made that way. You're supposed to be the provider. And so, women out there, if you're providing for a man, you're basically shaping him to be something that is unnatural. You're taking him out of his element. You're helping transform him into something, and he's going to be worthless to you. Whatever you think you're getting out of that relationship, in the end, he's worthless to you if you're taking care of him. If you're having to feed him, provide direction for him. There's nothing wrong with helping a man. You should do that. If he has some goals that he's trying to achieve, by all means, be his ride or die. Be his best partner, his best buddy, as y'all accomplish this together. Give him a reason to say thank you every day and appreciate you, but also be a positive force in his life so he has a reason to say thank you and to be appreciative. If you don't have that dynamic going in your relationship, if it's really you being in charge because you trust you don't trust him, and he's okay with you leading and making all the decisions, that is a formula for disaster, Tom. So we have to um, we have to get more men to come to this show, Tom, and we may have to just start here with Black Men Speak. We have the first Wednesday of the month
which is
dedicated to
today, which is
yes,
today.
they're dedicated to the youth. And so this is a show that first Wednesday of the month, Tom, where all the mothers, all the wives should have their husbands on this show, listening, taking advice, and learning how to be better men.
Yes, and if we talk about those principles, Jimmy, and I, with a few exceptions, Jimmy, with a few exceptions, if you have, and let's say we're going back to prehistory, and we have the traditional man and woman. If someone's going out to hunt, it's typically going to be the man. And
Yes.
because you have to eat, you have to be able to provide for your children. And typically, if you have a man and a woman, and you have to get something to eat, and then the man is waiting on the woman, she's not going to be with him too long. She's going to probably eventually end up finding someone else who will go out and hunt for her. Let's say, Jimmy, if we are in the household and you hear a shot outside, you hear somebody knocking on your door, something, hits the wall or something like that. If he's sitting up waiting on his woman to go out there and find out, what's going on, you got a problem, Jimmy. You got a problem, and she knows that she's got a problem if she's scared and he's waiting on her to go check out what the problem is. So
Well, Tom,
we've
um,
got to protect, we've
you
got
made my point from another show from years ago, and you don't realize. So it was kind of like a gambit you stepped into on the
no.
chessboard. Um, but I'll save that conversation for another day. When you're right, you hear the knock on the door, the man should have gotten up and go check that out, see what was going on, rather than seeing his woman out there. She end up he's hiding, he shoots through the door. She ends up dead when the return fire comes. But she should have never been in that hallway to start with.
I
Um,
understand, Jimmy, and I
I
know it's
don't mind. I don't mind him getting shot up in that hallway, and she survives it. Because then I would say, you know what he did, what he was supposed to do, which is go check this out and protect his woman. But sending your woman out in that hallway, no, he'll forever be a coward to me. So, uh, but that's another story, Tom. But yes, we need women, we need wives, we need mothers. If you don't know where to send your son for some advice. You don't have a mentor, a strong mentor in his life. You know, please. I mean, we dedicated the first Wednesday for the young boys of America, for mothers that can have somewhere to send them, Tom, to get some useful advice, to have someone set them in the right direction. But this even goes for husbands, Tom, boyfriends, fiancés. Like I said, if you're a woman, you go to your guy and say, "Hey, why do you love me? Why do you need me in your life?" If he can't give you an answer right there on the spot, you need to send him over here to Black Men Speak, first Wednesday of each month, so he can get a clue. Maybe we can help you out and maybe help save the marriage that you have. And Tom, also, strong black men also need to speak up. We need to stop allowing society to shame us as if there's something wrong with us. You call it Neanderthal, you call it caveman, you call it old fashioned, you call you know, you're not modern anymore. This is not how we live our life anymore. Maybe that's not how you live your life, and maybe that's not why. Maybe that's why you're not happy. But for women that are happy, I still say, Tom, it comes down to our basic nature, which has not changed in the 250,000 years we've been on this planet. We're still animals at our core. We have brains where we can think, but at our core, we're still animals. Men want to be pleased and looked up to and respected. Women want to be provided with security. You have to start there, Tom.
Yeah. Now, what I am not saying is that women are a doormat. They are not.
They are not. That's correct.
Women have very clear, and they are designed with very clear and specific roles, divinely, so to speak. They are hardwired in a certain way. They are smarter in us in several different
A
ways, and
lot of
they were
different ways,
designed
Tom.
by God that way. And we also have our strengths as well. But Jimmy, in those areas, when we are prepared and without effort do those things that make them feel what you said earlier, secure, what does it do? It addresses what we talked about last week, Jimmy, that stress issue that a
Yes.
lot of women are dealing with right now because they don't have that covering, is what we talked about, that covering, so that they have someone that will help protect, help provide, even though they can provide for themselves,
Yes, they
who
can.
can help hunt and or build. It allows the woman to take her natural place, and it removes that stress away from her. That is not to say that we are Cro-Magnon. I am not saying that at all. But what I am saying is, regardless of how strong women say that they choose to be, they want a stronger man, regardless of what that looks like. And that's what we have to be prepared to do. That is what we have to shape our young men to be. And that is what we have to challenge our brothers who are adults to be, if we're going to build a great nation. Because let's be very clear, Jimmy, we are in a war.
We
We are
are.
being attacked on a daily basis. Some people call it microaggressions. You can call it what you will. But women have been carrying the mantle for a very long time. And that's not to say that there are not brothers out there who have not been fighting the fight. We have. But ultimately, we cannot leave it up to women to carry the mantle. We as men have to take our
Thank you.
position just as women have to take their position. So we fight, because let's be very clear, we cannot fight separately. And I think that's the one thing that we have to be very careful about. We cannot fight separately. We have to fight as a
Team.
conglomerate in order to overcome the issues that we have to deal with in this country that are unique, probably, Jimmy, than any other country in the world.
And Tom, when we talk about leadership, we're not talking about the man just goes around the house bossing everyone around. That's not what leadership is. That's just being a coward. I mean, leadership is getting people to follow you, Tom, and do the right thing because they are inspired to do so. You know, if your wife, if you have a good wife, and she loves you and she's inspired to be a good wife, then you're doing your job. You're on target. But if it becomes a fight and it becomes, well, why don't you do this? You're not doing that, and back and forth, then there's a problem there, Tom. So leadership is not the person is the person who's ultimately responsible. But that person should also create an environment, Tom, where you're inspiring your kids to go out and make good grades, to be successful, uh, children, teenagers, and growing into young adults. I mean, that is your job. That's your responsibility. As a king, if you want to be the king, then you're ultimately responsible for your kingdom. Everything, every last stitch of it, Tom. Your queen bears no responsibility whatsoever. If your children are hungry in the middle of the night and someone has to get them change the diaper and feed the baby, if you haven't inspired her to go do it for you and let her know you appreciate her doing it while you sleep, then you get your butt up and you go do it. That's your responsibility. That child now becomes part of your kingdom and your responsibility. So I think when men understand what responsibility and leadership is truly about, Tom, I think it'll lead to them finding ways to be more appreciative when they understand that they bear the responsibility. It's not a shared responsibility. This is your responsibility, and you need to understand that, and she needs to understand that. Um, excuse me. And with that being said, Tom, we have. Oh wow, we're right. We got about 5 6 minutes left. So
And by the way, we want to thank Miss Shirley for jumping on the chat line with us today. Jimmy, it looks like
what did Miss Shirley ask us?
she asked, why did she break up? Well, Jimmy actually broke up with her. She said, why did she break
No,
up
no,
with
she broke up with
you?
me.
Oh, she broke up with you.
Yes,
What made her take you back each time?
yes, Tom. I would miss appointments. We'd make dates. I would stand her up. I wouldn't call her back. Wouldn't text her back. I mean, I did a lot of things that I did on purpose. It wasn't like it was an accident or anything. These are things. These are calculated moves. Um, for I think for Christmas, when she got me this really nice sweater. Time I got her some placemats for the table. You know,
No,
I mean,
just, Tell me it ain't so, Jim. You didn't get a place match for the table.
Place match, Tom. Yeah, I think I got them from Target. I got the cheapest ones I could find. So I was doing things like that, and every time we made plans, I'd wait till 30 minutes, an hour after the date, and call her up and say, "Hey, I can't make it." Um, but so I would do that time and just be an absolute ass just to see how many times she would break up with me if I could win her back before she finally just threw the towel in and said no more. So that was about 7 times. But there were a lot of others that were about 2 or 3 times. But this one lady was 7. She had the record.
Gotcha. All right, Jimmy. All right. Well, we got about 5 minutes to wrap this up, Jimmy. Let's kind of talk at a macro level. I mean, the premise of this conversation: can Black America be saved? Why we have to build stronger Black men?
Tom, if we don't start building stronger black men, it won't be saved. And like I said, sending your men and your teenage boys to this show, at least for the first Wednesday of each month, is a good start. So we should have a lot more men participating on this show, airing their grievances out. We can talk about it and tell them why you have to do certain things. I don't care if you're uncomfortable with it. Practice make perfect. But you'll be doing yourself, the community, and the black nation a favor, a service by becoming stronger. And some men just don't know how to do that, Tom. I understand that some of this is out of your comfort zone. Um, when I was a predator, chasing women and preying on them, yeah, at first it was strange to me to do these things. I still do some of them, but not because I'm a predator anymore. But for as compliment every woman I meet, I say something nice about her. I find earrings, shoes, something to compliment her, to be a positive force in her life, not a negative. But it takes practice time, and I'm sorry, I got something in my throat, but that takes practice time to become comfortable with it. So it's not something you're going to do overnight. No one's expecting you to do it overnight. But if you slowly start making these changes, become a stronger man, your woman will appreciate you and love you more. And if you don't have any direction, don't have any goals, start thinking about it. Start allowing yourself to dream about something that you always wanted to do that you and your wife can do together where she feels needed in your life. You have a reason to be appreciative of her contribution. Find a reason to get her involved, make her feel better about being with you, as opposed to, yeah, well, she knows how I feel. She knows what I think. Yeah, that doesn't cut it anymore, Tom.
I'll break mine down to a couple of simple things. One is taking responsibility for your decisions.
Yes,
That's called being responsible, and that's being accountable. Number two, taking responsibility for the children, whether it was planned or by accident. Once it's here, it's here. Take responsibility for your children. Something I'm gonna go back to what Jimmy said. Always have a plan. Always know where you're going. And be
always.
quite frankly, if a woman cannot support you in terms of where you are trying to go, then she's probably not the right woman for you.
She's
Probably not
not,
the right
Tom.
person for you.
Move on.
Exactly. And then obviously that big, the big S when it comes to the person in your life is security. Be willing to do what it takes to make the woman in your life, or in that for that matter, to make your woman feel secure. And Jimmy, we've said this on several occasions, even if it means risking your life, ultimately paying the price to make sure that anyone and everyone in your household feels
Say,
secure.
well, Christ had a destiny with the cross, Tom. He had to die for
Exactly.
his bride and to take their sins and take responsibility for their sins by dying on the cross. So if you ask him and he says no, or he's stumbling on his answer, then yeah, he's not quite where you need him to be. But every man should be willing to die for his wife and his family to keep them safe.
Absolutely, Jim. And I think that wraps it up for this evening. We are right at the top of the hour.
Um, okay, so I guess we had no one to call in.
Not today.
Okay, so we'll be back here next month on the first Wednesday. So yes, if you have a man in your life, a young man in your life, send them to this show at least definitely on that first Wednesday. With that being said, Tom, we're out.